longer feels like it wants to kill me. And that is a seriously underappreciated characteristic of cars these days, I feel. Hello guys, welcome back to TierSpec TV. Surprise, surprise, it is another episode in the workshop. It seems to be the second, if not first home for my Defender this year. And normally when we start these videos, we start off by saying, today we're going to install this, or today we're going to go and do this. But today, as you can probably tell, we have rather a selection of items in front of us. So we're going to have to try to pick and choose what we want to do for today, prioritize the most important things. Because there's a lot that needs doing to this Defender. Going from this side, we've got a box full of servicing bits. We've got filters, oil, we've got a fan belt, everything sort of standard servicing stuff because it's well overdue a service. More of that in here. And we've actually done a servicing video for TD5 before, but there's a few bits in there we haven't actually covered previously. This is just more general parts, and then here, this is actually the bit I'm most excited about. And no, it is not a box of newspaper, there's something within the newspaper. So we have a brand new steering box in here, because we changed a whole bunch of parts over this year. What have we done? Steering, damper, we've done all suspension stuff, we did bushings, we did all the we installed a whole Gwyn Lewis kit, new drop on. We've basically done everything relating to steering on this Defender except the steering box. So I came to the conclusion that it did need a new steering box. So I'm praying that this is going to fix it. It's just a reconditioned steering box, nothing too fancy, from MM4x4. I thought that was, out of all the places I looked, one of the best to get it, because these can be really, really expensive. But this one, if I exchange the old one, for this one I'll get some money back as well, but even so, without exchanging it, the price was quite reasonable. So if you're looking for a steering box, MM4x4 is the place to go. Then finally we've got a few fun bits which aren't entirely essential, just for looks, a bit of fun, from Tough Rock. You may know that we've partnered with them previously to get TierSpec TV Tough Rock mud flaps made. In fact, a few of you out there have those fitted to your Land Rovers. And I've got some stainless steel rear brackets here because I never fitted those. I always had the standard brackets for mine. And on the front I have the Gwyn Lewis galvanized kit now. So on the back we're going to have the stainless steel stuff. We've got, that's something for your disco. Yeah. You could explain that.
That's a power panel, they call it. It sits in front of the transfer case lever, which you've got like 4 different outputs for USBs or anything you kind of want. A really nice black powder coated piece of kit I'm going to install at some point.
Yeah, so that will feature somewhere on the channel at some point, I'm sure. Then we have some key rings and goodies that Phil has just thrown in with, interestingly, a message written in Danish. So I don't know if Phil has been brushing up on his Danish or whether that is just a Google Translate job. Don't know, but that's some good fun there. And then there's also some new mud flaps from mine as well, because mine are looking a little worse for wear after everything this Defender has been through. So I've got brand new flaps as well as the brackets in this box, and then the bits for this is disco. So what I think we're going to do is start off by doing the servicing, because it's overdue a service, and that's something that every vehicle, regardless of whether it's a Land Rover or not, needs. So that's what we're going to be doing first. Then we're going to look into doing the steering box, because that is the next most important thing for me in terms of getting this back to a normal state, because right now it feels like it is possessed. And then we can start looking at the more kind of fun, silly bits like the Tough Rock stuff and other refinements we might need to do. So let's jump into whatever the next clip is. I don't know.
So first, before we take him up on the list, we're just gonna take off this plastic bit and this plastic bit holding in by 3 bolts here and 4 screws on the front bit, just so we can get to the belt as well as the engine cover, as we need to take that off. And as well, just open up the oil cap here, just so you can get air through here as you are emptying it. Otherwise you'll get that kind of sound if you take a water bottle and turn it upside down. The oil will go absolutely everywhere. So we're just gonna open that and take him up and just start taking all the fluids out of him, so we can put some new ones in. So we just got the belt off here, which requires you to take off the fan, which quite easily you can do it with this special tool or not. After I took the fan belt off, you can just have a look at these or how it looks. There's a bit of damage, but not too much, but definitely gonna need replacing now. Next, what we saw is this little thing right here is leaking. I'm actually not sure. I think it's for getting into the wheel that runs in here, the cog wheel for the timing. That's leaking a bit, as you can see down here, all the oil that have collected over the time. And people say you can just buy a new one of these, but if you don't got a new one like we have, just gonna pop it off and give it some liquid sealant around and pop it in. You'll still be able to get it out when you need it, but it's also just gonna keep it tight and not spit oil everywhere. And then while you've got that off, you can have a look at all the pulley wheels here. As you can hear, that one might need replacing, but you can pull in there. It says there isn't any slag in it whatsoever, just got a bit of dirt inside. I might pull it out and just clean it out and see if we can get that sound to stop. But you got one there, you got one here, and then you got last one down here, which is the actual tightener. This down here is operated by a spring, but quite easy to just undo that, just like any other car. Take the tension off, start by taking the middle bit off here, and then you just pull the whole belt out. It's not really rocket science to do that. But yeah, I might take these wheels off and just clean them out, make sure they're nice and clean inside, so see if we can get that sound away. That'll be nice, but no movement in any of them. So yeah, I'll continue with that, and you'll continue taking this thing off, and we'll have a look underneath it and see what's actually inside here. So now we've got the rocker cover off here, and as you can see, here's the part we need to take off. We just unplugged it. What's a good thing to do on this plug here is just make sure you haven't got any oil in here. Just take a clean piece of paper and push it down and make sure you haven't got any oil. So this one's gonna go off now. Just unplug these different plugs here and clean it all off afterwards, especially down here where the new plug's gonna be sitting. Now you've got the whole rocker cover off. There's more than one thing you can do. One of them is take down all the injector numbers, which is the front one. Just use this to clean it off with. There you go. So that number down there is injector number, and you want to note that or write that down so you don't have to take the injector or the rocker cover off next time you need to do any work on that. So just write those down, like this is number 1 cylinder, one close to the front, and take that as 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, and just write those numbers down. It's like a code between numbers and letters, just so you don't have to take that off again if you want to do any remapping or anything with it. Other than that, we're gonna do service on the camshaft as well. We're gonna serialize that. As the lobes, or as it drives, the lobes are gonna get more and more worn. To make sure that doesn't affect the performance too much, we're just gonna tighten down these nuts accordingly to the service manual how to do that. We're gonna go on that after we swap this bit out here. Gonna show you how to do that. And of course, the importance of doing the wiring bit here is because if you've got oil here, it will go directly into the ECU, and that's gonna ruin your ECU. And they're quite famous for doing that, for leaping or like seeking oil under pressure, pushing the oil through the wires between the plastic bit of the wires and the actual metal bit into it here and down through the plug and into the ECU. So that's why you have to swap these out once in a while to make sure that they do not go bad. I've seen people actually ruining this seal right here to unleave that pressure, so oil just dripping straight down instead of running with the wires to the ECU. You can do that as well, but you might as well just buy one of these. They're quite cheap and easy to replace. I would probably do it like, I think this is the first time we've done it to yours and there isn't any oil in it. In my TD or my Discovery, there's a tiny bit of oil in it. That's why I chose to replace it, but every second or third year will be fine. I think the manual says like every time you do a service, but I don't see that necessary. Just keep an eye out, unplug the plug here and have a look if there's any oil. If there is, it's time to swap it out and have a look and see how far the oil's gone down. So now we are just about to do the timing on it. I just did the first bit here. As I said before, the lobes on the camshaft are going to get worn over time, and you can adjust that by undoing these nuts here and tightening down. So what we're doing first is putting a pull or a breaker bar onto the wheel itself. We're going to turn that until we get a lobe that is exactly underneath the injector here, so the injector is completely maxed out. And as you can see here, it's just about to be at the highest point you can get. Once you get that on the highest point, you want to show on this one, you're going to undo this locking nut here, and then you're going to bottom out with a screwdriver onto this bit you're gonna bottom it out as far as you can go. It'll be a mechanical stop at the end that you can't go over. And once you do that, you're gonna do one whole turn out. And then you're gonna, with this one still in place, tighten up the locking nut as well. And that way you're done the timing. We actually just found out, it's the first time we're doing it on Liam's. I also just did mine. But roughly where about the screwdriver is now is where about the screw was before. So it is about 1/4 of a turn we've gotten it further down. That just means you're going to get more power out of the car. So that's all good. That's a good thing to do every time you do the service on this bit here as well. It doesn't take that long. It's quite easy to do. Just need to get the fan off and the rocker cover off, and then you're good to go. And just put a X on each of them once I do them down, because they don't fire in like cylinder 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5. They've got a different sequence. So just keep an eye out for which one comes up, and then just undo it and tighten it up again. So I'm going to do that one next, and that one probably, and then that one and that one in the end. So we'll do that now.
So I want to go a bit more into detail about what we're doing and the process behind it, because we've sort of jumped in at the deep end here after the intro and all. In terms of what we're doing. So of course first we're doing the service. As I mentioned, we've got the rocker cover here. I've just put the new gasket on. We've got the new injector wiring loom here, and we're going into this part in a bit more detail because that's the bit we sort of didn't do in the past when servicing. In the past we've just sort of done the oil change and everything, at least when we've done it on camera, but I've never actually done these elements of the service before, which is a bit stupid, but there you go, we're now doing it. So this one's a bit more thorough, if you like, than previous services. So we've got the rocker cover, gasket, injector seal. Nis has just emptied the oil out of the engine. We're going to be doing the diffs, transfer box, etc. All of that as well in a second. But this is also sort of a continuation of the video, if you remember, where I spoke about when I showed a bit of the crossmember, the new crossmember process, because that was sort of where this all started back in summer, was that this desperately needed to be changed. The whole rear end underneath was not in at all good shape, and I kind of coined it as making my Defender great again, because it wasn't in a very good state and it needed to be done. And I guess you can work out where the popular phrase "make X great again" came from. So it's all about, this year's been all about kind of, or at least the second half of this year, transforming this Defender and getting it back into a much better shape, because it has been sort of used and abused over the last few years. But I've come into a position lately where this is no longer my daily driver. It's become a bit of a project car, a second car, Sunday driver, whatever you want to call it. And I sort of treat it as a bit more of a toy now, rather than something I use day in and day out. And that is why we're now doing stuff like this, and just trying to make this nicer, because it is so much tidier and so much better looking now than it was before. Of course, it is not nice to drive. It is about as bad as it has ever been to drive, thanks to the steering, but that is why we have the new steering box in here, because if you remember that we did a whole bunch of stuff with steering and suspension before. I've had a death wobble for a long time on my steering. In other words, a very violent shake on the steering wheel when you get to about 70, 80 kilometers an hour. And after changing everything, not much has changed. It's gotten a little better, but there's still something fundamentally wrong with the steering, and it's very vague. It feels very loose, and frankly a little bit unsafe at high speeds, which is why I finally committed to buying a steering box. It's just been so long to find the right one for the right price. I sourced this one, as I said, from Machines, no, MM4x4 I think they're called, and that was the best price. Like I said, if I return the old one as well, I'll get some money back, which is awesome. But that is a basically brand new steering box. It's reconditioned. And then there's all the other bits. There's the Tough Rock bits. Got rid of the old mud flap brackets when we did the crossmember, because they were just rotten and they were just standard old steel ones. So I've got some stainless steel ones from Tough Rock. They're the best guys in the business if you want that kind of thing, as well as the mud flaps themselves. I've got they're on the front, you can still see them. The current Tough Rock mud flaps, they're ultra flexible mud flaps, which are much better than sort of standard Defender flaps. So yeah, decided to go all in on that as well. And then of course the service, it hasn't been serviced for way too long. Normally I do it once a year, sort of every summer, and it's now November and we're doing the service, so it's a little bit overdue, but I haven't been driving it as much, to be fair, but it still needs to be done every year, of course, and it's always such a nice feeling when you service a vehicle properly, because it just feels satisfying. If you know, you know. So we've got the engine oil down there, all the servicing bits. We've got other bits as well, like glow plugs, that's all the filters, and then as I said, the injector loom and the gasket and everything else, and then there's bits all over the place, like for example the rear windscreen wiper, and that's what I mean with this. It's just lots of little things, which is why it's hard to kind of put it into a single video and say like, today we're doing this, because it would just end up being sort of loads of individual little boring videos where we do something not interesting, like replacing a steering box, which might be very valuable information for some of you, but we would prefer to kind of package it in a different way, and that's why I'm doing this sort of making my Defender great again kind of thing. It's just because that feels like it has more of a storyline to it, in that we are trying to make this Defender literally great again, make it drive and look as it should. I mean, it's still, you know, rough around the edges and all, but the bits that count, the cross member, the mounting rail, all the actual screws and fixings, we did the door hinges, all this kind of stuff. We've now got the Gwyn Lewis mud shields in here to protect everything. You know, all of these little things. The already wheel carrier, because I needed a new wheel carrier as well, the fuel tank guard, all of these things that needed to be done are now being done slowly, and it just so happens that we ended up piling up loads of stuff here over time, because we don't always have time to film, so stuff was just building up, and now it's all here. Decided to do it all in one go and put it into this kind of format. So to be honest, I don't know how far we're going to get this evening. We'll have to see. Hopefully, well, we will get the service done because we've already started it and you can't not finish that. And then we've got the steering box as well, which will, I hope, go in. No idea how tricky that's going to be. It is just one thing. It's not a, you know, whole bunch of a series of parts like the mud shields we did a couple of weeks ago, where that took quite a while. The steering box is just the steering box that needs to go out and then the new one in. So hopefully that's not too complicated, but that's always the famous last words with Land Rover bits. And this has also been kind of cleaning up some things like the what do you call them? Rollers, I guess, for the belt up front, and all these little bits as well, cleaning up the inside, and just making everything go more smoothly. So everything's going to plan. No? Yes? Good. I would say so too. So the service is always the kind of easy-ish bit, I guess, and then we've got to move on to the steering box, and that's the bit I'm really, really excited. Like, it sounds weird to say I'm excited for a steering box. You know, you'd be excited about getting some bigger tires or a power upgrade or something like that. I'm really excited about putting the steering box in, because this has been an absolute pig to drive for basically the entirety of this year. I think the steering issues started like probably about last December, last January, so almost basically the entirety of this year it has not been nice to drive at all. The steering has been awful, and we've just been going through everything systematically trying to make it right again, and I finally got the steering box that I wanted, or realized I wanted. So yeah, let's see what happens. I'm going to shut up now because I've been talking for ages. Here comes Nissa with the fresh juice, and yeah, let's get back to it. We'll try and keep this as linear as possible, but we tend to jump around a bit because this is the problem with these workshop things. Basically, if you don't know, when we do these, everything takes twice as long when you have to film it, and Land Rover jobs tend to take a while anyway, so we'll just try and to film the interesting bits, the bits that are relevant, and yeah, I'll see you in whatever the next clip happens to be.
So what we're doing now is putting some oil into the universal joints here. You got one here, one there, one there. So pretty much got 3 on each, except if you've got a disco, you got a double universal link on the front bit, but on the fenders it's just one. And we do this just to make sure you got lube inside of it or oil inside of it, because you got small bearings which turn around whenever you're driving. So every time you got the place or the space for it, remember just to grease these up with some, I don't know what we're using, some kind of standardized oily thing here that we pretty much just pressurize into it, and we just keep going until we see stuff come out. around it. That way we know we got enough in there. We just do that standard every time we got the car up, just so we know it's lubricated and we don't, because if you don't do this, they will destroy itself within 100 kilometers if they're completely bone dry. So because good practice is do it every single time you've got space for it.
Especially when you're running a remap.
Yeah, especially when running a remap, it's a good thing to do.
So, to update you once again, we just had a bit of a nightmare with the oil filter. The CD5 has two oil filters. You have one here, which is the centrifugal oil filter, and then you have a standard one which is down there underneath the turbo somewhere, or sort of behind the turbo. And it's in a really awkward position. And it took us a long time to get the old one off. We've now fitted, which should hopefully make it easier next time, we've now fitted a smaller one. This is the same, this is a new one, but this is the same size as the one that I had on before. Well, we now fitted one that's about almost half the size of that, and the only difference that makes is that it might not last as long, but when you're treating it like we are this and servicing it once a year, it doesn't really matter. So there's nothing to be worried about. It's obviously just variations in manufacturers or whatever, I don't know, but the kit I normally have or normally buy comes with this sized oil filter, and luckily we had the smaller type here in the workshop, so we just put that on instead. Because getting this one off is really, really tight, so we put the smaller one on. We've also got this tool here, which fits the shape of, my focus is all over the place here, which fits the shape of the filter. You slide it into the bottom and it's just like a little wrench to undo it. But yeah, basically there's not very much room, it's very tight, it took us a while to get it off. New one is now on. We just wasted a whole bunch of time on that. So new one is on. All that needs to be done now is this puts it back together, and oil in, as far as I can remember. Oh, and then fuel filter, I guess we should do that as well, and air filter. And then hopefully we can move on to the steering box.
So we're now done with the service part of the vehicle of this for tonight. We left the fan belt and the fan itself out, just so we could get better access down to the steering, or the power steering unit, which in our case sits on the left hand. So we're taking these air pipes out from the turbo. Should get a bit better access now to do it. But from what I can see, we need to disconnect the steering shaft here, and after that we'll disconnect all the pipes that goes into the steering box itself, and after that we'll go underneath and actually take the bolts out that holds it up, and then it should just drop out, hopefully. And then we're gonna bolt up the new one. So that is the plan of action right now, and then somewhere in between that we're gonna go and get some food, but that's only when we get that one bolt we can't get out. We're gonna go up and eat and come back, and then it will be done and it will fall out by itself, hopefully. But that is where we are at now.
So far so good on the steering box progress. Everything's out on top, right?
Yeah.
So we're moving down to underneath, we've got the car back up. We're almost at the point where we can take the drop arm off, and then these which support the steering box, and then it should soon be ready to come out, which is all very exciting.
So we just went ahead to use this drop arm puller made by Laser Tools to get the drop arm off, but as we put it on here, it seems to be not long enough. And I thought, well, it's a bit weird because it's made for measurements, and if you have a look here, you can actually see part of the seal is coming off here from inside. So what I think is that this shaft might be so worn, it's actually starting to push itself downwards for the gearing, actually pushing it up and down as you move it. So I think it's about time this steering box gets replaced with a new one.
Yeah, and we have actually used that before on this,
yeah,
which is also interesting because that means it used to fit and now it doesn't fit. So something that shouldn't change has changed.
You all know how fun drop arms are.
Yeah, because if you haven't seen previously when we did this, this is actually a Discovery 2 drop arm, because it's basically a better kind of system or design than the standard Defender one. But drop arms are infamously difficult to get off, so we got that tool. to pull it off a while ago, and now we can't seem to fit it on anymore. The good thing is that we don't really care about the steering box this time.
Nope.
So it can come out any means necessary.
It's quite weird, so tight. It's not that long time since we took it out. I took it off.
Oh. So as long as we can get that back into the space where that one was, then we should be good to go.
So we now got the box in, quite hard to get. You kind of have to do a bit of Tetris master level or god level to get it in, but it's in now. We bolted it up. Just need to connect the two hoses to feed it. After that we're gonna fill the reservoir up, and then I think we are about to start him after that. Of course we need to hook up the inlet from the steering wheel and into the inlet shaft, so we can actually turn it. And then we're gonna fill him up and we're gonna bleed him, and then we're gonna find the top dead center, like the center point of it, mark that, turn it, and so we're gonna put the drop arm on just so we got enough steering on each side. And probably bleed it as well and do the final adjustments of it. But otherwise I think the hard job is done now, I hope. Now it's just the fiddly bit to get it all lined up and good. So we're now back and we've got the steering box in. Everything is plumbed up, and we also bled the thing, and the drop arm is back on, and this is also silverized or centered as it should be. And what I found out about centering the thing was putting on the steering shaft onto the steering wheel and just turning it one side and notice what clock position it is, turning on to the other side, noticing what clock it is, and just slightly turn the input shaft a tiny bit at a time until you get the exact same, like, opposite clock whenever you hit the limiter of the, where you can't turn the steering wheel anymore. And after that you just center it, and take off the input shaft, turn it so the steering wheel's straight, put it back in, and after that you go back down and put on the drop arm, because that kind of puts itself. If you still find out that the steering wheel is just a bit off or anything, you can adjust it here at that nut or that nut, or you can simply just take the steering wheel off and center it and put it back on, which is quite easier to do on a Defender because there's no airbags, any cruise control buttons or anything. There's like a disco 2 and forward, so that would probably be the easiest bit to do it. Now we're just going to put the wheel back on, put the pipes from the turbo, and after that we're going to take him out, go up and wash him because we did have a little accident spraying oil everywhere. And now we got the fan and everything out. It's a quite nice idea to completely clean it out now, get rid of all the oil that has been there for quite some time. And after that we'll take him back down and do the last bits and pieces, and then we should be done.
So it has been several weeks since you last saw us. Last time we worked late into the night getting the steering box in, and we also did some adjustment to the tightness of the steering, but there is still something not quite right because there's a bit of a dead zone at the top of the wheel. And while I appreciate that Land Rovers tend to have quite a lot of play in the steering compared to a normal car, it shouldn't be this much. However, we think it might just be down to the fact that the steering box needs to be bled properly, and there just could be air in the system. So what we're going to do now is try and bleed it and see if that helps, and hopefully that is the end of these steering woes. So what we've just done is spent quite a while bleeding the new steering box, and there probably was some air in it as well. We topped up the fluid because I think we had neglected to do that last time after bleeding it the previous time. So that's all good now. And then we also had a play with tightening the steering box itself. If you didn't know, I'll just come over here and show you on the old one. But if you weren't aware, you can actually tighten the steering using this right here that's on the, where's my finger? There we go. This on top of the steering box. You can tighten or loosen it just using a spanner and an Allen key. Obviously it's a bit more awkward to get to when it's actually inside the vehicle, but that was what we were doing because there was two problems. There was this dead zone I talked about in the steering, where in the middle there was just no feel in the steering whatsoever, and that shouldn't have been happening on a new steering box, of course. And the other problem was that the wheels were basically juddering when you turned them from very specific situation, but from left to right quite sharply. The wheels would judder, and we have no idea what has been causing that, but we got rid of the dead zone. The wheel juddering, I have no idea. I'll stick in a clip of it so you can see what it looks like here. So as you can see, it's quite a strange phenomenon. Not sure what's causing it, but we've just sort of given up on it because we've done everything we can to set up the steering box, like bleeding it, tightening it on the top. And this juddering still seems to be happening, but like I said, we've just given up on it because, frankly, you've got to turn the wheel very, very violently for it to actually occur. So maybe there is just the cause, that it is just you're turning it, faster than it's actually designed to go. I don't know. And the likelihood of you needing to turn that sharply on the road is very unlikely. And I think if you're going at any speed, then you might even roll the vehicle anyway if you turned that quickly. So we're just going to leave that for now. I don't think there's any problem. We'll just see how it feels out when we actually drive. But anyway, so the steering we'll leave for now, and we'll see how it feels when we drive. Next thing we're going to do is replace the fuel pressure regulator, which sits at the back of the engine block down there, because that appears to be leaking quite a lot. And we have the new one over here, and that is apparently one of those common TD5, one of the common TD5 faults. Everything on a TD5 seems to be a common TD5 fault, but there you go.
Connector off, got the return line off. Now I just need the inlet, which sits up here onto the diesel heater.
So the old one is out, as you can see here. We've got the new one alongside it, ready to go in. And I think the trick to getting the awkward bottom bolt off was just using a load of extensions, as you can probably tell.
So inside, or behind the pressure regulator going into the block, we got this tiny little mesh here, which is also like an extra filter that sits in the engine that kind of filtrates anything that's inside. So it's quite important to take that out as well. There's a tiny little O rubber ring behind it here. It sits like that. When it then goes onto the pressure regulator, we're going to clean that up, make sure that's nice and clean, to get as much fuel as possible into it, and then just clean the surfaces, and then we can put the new one on.
The new fuel pressure regulator is in, and now they are being tightened up, or the bolts, sorry, are being tightened up to 25 Newton meters. And now that the new fuel pressure regulator has been installed, we need to run the purge cycle for the fuel system, and that is done by turning the ignition on and then pumping or pressing the accelerator pedal 5 times, and then you can see the engine management light there is blinking, and you might be able to hear some of the noises as well. And now Nissa is spraying both the fuel pressure regulator and the steering box with some engine cleaner, which A, will help us clean up all the spillages we've made, and B, help us identify if there are any more leaks. We're actually going to keep hold of the old pressure regulator and stick it in the ultrasonic cleaner to clean all of this grime off of it, because we suspect that this is actually working and that the fault may have been the gasket and not the actual regulator itself. So that is worth keeping and perhaps using in the future if necessary. In a moment, I'm going to head up to the pressure washer to clean off the mess from the old fuel pressure regulator and the mess we made with the steering box, as well as the cross member, to prepare for the new mud flap brackets. But before I do, I thought I'd just show you these 3 tucked away over here for winter, because this is a rather lovely lineup. We've got the 2 V8s on the right and the Heritage Edition on the left. Nissa's 90 hasn't appeared on the channel in quite a while, and I think it's a fan favourite, so we definitely need to get that back out soon. This one is basically stock, whereas this one is most certainly not. I'd imagine there must be some newer subscribers that might not even actually be familiar with either of these two, but they are such nice examples of the 3.5 litre Rover V8. Anyway, let's head up to the pressure washer. Right, I'm not going to count this as the official first test drive of the new steering setup. I'll save that for later, hopefully at the end of this video, because I'm only just going up the road a few hundred meters on basically straight roads, but this will be my first impressions of driving this with hopefully normal steering in a long time. So I thought I'd just stick the camera on anyway, and it feels good. Maybe a little bit tight, maybe we can loosen that a bit, I don't know. Nah, it's alright, I think. Obviously I'm going quite low speed, so can't say anything too dramatic just yet. But that play is gone, and I'm so happy about that, because there was that huge dead zone. Like, the steering, as soon as I turn now, it is like, that is I can't remember the last time I felt that. It is so direct again. Good God, that is nice. Wow, that's a nice feeling. That is night and day difference right there. I think the steering wheel needs to be centered again. It's a bit off. But that is a simple fix, of course. Yeah, I'm looking forward to going for a proper drive in this. That should be good fun. So I did not expect this to be the next sequence in this video, but regardless, it's the next day, and we are about to go out for the finale, I suppose, the test drive, although I've already driven it a bit, so I can tell you it's magnificent. But let's head out. I'm just been waiting for some cars to go past so that I have a clear run, because I suspect that I may be driving slightly more spiritedly than they are. Rolling around. It's back to normal. That's what I wanted to say. After all this work, the steering, the wheels turn when you turn the steering wheel. What a novelty. How amazing. And it no longer feels like it wants to kill me. And that is a seriously underappreciated characteristic of cars these days, I feel. It's so nice. And that's the speed limit. I'm sort of, don't really know what I can say to you guys. It works. Steering wheel turns, the wheels turn. It's what you would expect it to do, and what it hasn't done for a very long time. Whether it's completely eradicated the death wobble, I don't know, because I've only taken it up to about 80-90 kilometers an hour. Whether when you get to 100 it's just gonna go nuts again, I don't know. So that's something we can test. But for the most part it seems good, and 90% of my driving anyway, maybe even more, is just on country roads and in town now, because I have another car that I use for commuting, so I'm not really using this for motorway journeys or anything. Not to say that I'm happy having a death wobble, but that is not a huge issue right now. And the main thing over the past few weeks since installing the steering box was getting rid of this dead zone in the steering, because I'm not sure if I explained it in enough detail, but basically after installing the steering box, there was this massive play or dead zone. I just turned the wheel to demonstrate, and the whole car went side to side. It just goes to show how much better the steering is now. Absolutely amazing. the fact that I can just use this now as a normal vehicle when I want to is such a relief, because it seriously felt dangerous before. It was pretty unpredictable in the steering, and now it's okay. So we just need to find out if the death wobble is still there. If it is, then I don't know what else could be the cause other than the swivel pins, I think they're called. I don't know what else, that's about the only thing. Or wheel bearings, I suppose, but I don't think the wheel bearings is the issue, because there's absolutely no movement in the wheels when you try to move them around. So now we can unleash the 180 horses from the Storm Tuning remap now once again. And here I am cruising down a straight road at 80 kilometers an hour without issue. I think there's a slight kind of vibration or uneasiness that I can feel through the steering wheel, but I have to keep in mind that my tyres are in need of changing. They are really quite worn now, and especially when you have chunky 4x4 tyres, such as the ones I've got on here, then when they get worn and unevenly worn, it is, you know, normal to expect some vibration caused by that, or some wobble. I think so. Yeah, I'm not too concerned, and I have a new set of tyres for this Defender, and more on that soon. That'll be done in the new year, so we can see whether that solves the issue. But frankly, with a new set of tyres and maybe a new set of rims, I think we could be done here with all of this. So for the final test, we're heading out on the motorway for a short stint up to the next exit. That's 90, and that's 100 kilometers an hour, 60 miles an hour, and we're fine. Nothing's happened. There is a bit of a wobble, definitely. Okay, that's getting worse, but again, tyres potentially, I don't know. I'm definitely being jiggled about a bit here. Just backing off a little bit. Let's go back up to 100. Yeah, definitely not as bad as it was before though. And we're going back off now already. So we clearly have a bit of a wobble still at around 100 kilometers an hour, 60 miles an hour. What that's down to, I don't know. Could be tyres, could be the swivel pins. That we'll have to investigate further, I guess. But the worst of it, I think, is gone, and the steering feels good at sort of your normal 70, 80 kilometers an hour, which is what you're going to be doing most of the time. And like I say, I'm not going on the motorway very often anyway, so I'm not too concerned about that for now. But at least it seems like we can go back to driving this thing normally, which is also good news for you guys, because it means A, less videos about steering, and B, that you get more videos, well, yeah, just doing other stuff. That's the same point, isn't it? You get videos of other things happening involving this Defender. So, all in all, good news. Anyway, I think with that we can end this video here. It seems like more or less this steering madness is finally over, and we can go back to doing other things with this Defender. And for me, I think that is the best Christmas present I could have received this year, is a Defender that will actually behave normally. And on that point, I think this video will actually be out around 25th, 26th, or at least in the Christmas period. So we wish you a very, very Merry Christmas, and hopefully you get lots of goodies for your Land Rovers as well, of course. And there'll be plenty more videos to come after this. Sorry for the radio silence lately, but we're still around. We've still got lots of videos in the works.